Good evening. Welcome to the Community Awareness Committee's March panel discussion. Our topic this evening is Cobb 911 System Procedures and Operation. I am Trish Steiner, Chair of the Community Awareness Committee. The Community Awareness Committee is a committee of the Neighborhood Safety Commission. The Neighborhood Safety Commission is comprised of 15 individuals appointed by the chairman and the district commissioners. It is the policy of the Community Awareness Committee to not discuss any particular individual, incidents, or any past or present incidences or cases. We welcome and thank you for attending this evening, and welcome those of you who are watching on Cobb TV. We have cards available for written questions from the audience members, and we will collect those throughout the evening. Please just raise your hand and we will get your card from you. Please turn your cell phones off or on silence, as your phone will interfere with this live broadcasting. Our moderator this evening is Joel Cobb. Joel is an attorney whose practice is in trial litigation. He has been practicing attorney for 20 years. He currently serves on the Neighborhood Safety Commission and serves as its chair for one term. He serves as president of the Mableton Improvement Coalition and president of the Mableton Community Fund. He has also served as secretary and president of his HOA and was appointed by the Pass County Commissioner Chairman to serve as a member of the Transit Authority Board, eventually obtaining the position of this board's vice chairmanship. Joe will now introduce our distinguished panel members for this evening. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Again, my name is Joel Cope, and I want to welcome the folks who are our live audience members, as well as the folks who are watching us on TV 23 and online, to tonight's town hall discussion regarding the 911 system in Cobb County. I think you're in for a treat. We are very lucky to have with us some folks who are very dedicated public servants who help work with us in the 911 system. And what I want to do is just introduce them to you briefly, and they'll tell you each a little bit about themselves. And as Tricia said, we do have cards people can fill out that want to ask questions, and they can be distributed to us, and we can add those to the list that our panelists might bring out tonight. We are very fortunate to have them with us. The way this works is they'll provide a brief discussion of who they are and what they do, and then we'll go into the questions and answers sessions of our program and cover that with you. So without further ado, what I'd like to do is go ahead and begin to introduce to you the folks that we have with us tonight on our panel. They are Destiny Davidson, who's the director of Cobb 911, Emily Mistretta, 911 dispatcher, Todd Borowski, the training coordinator, Andrew Bruce, the CAD analyst, Chris Ledbetter, CAD manager, and Mike Ward, 800 megahertz specialist. And so what I'd do is just kind of start closest to me and kind of work our way across until we get to all our panelists and just introduce themselves, and then we'll go into the program.
My name is Andrew Bruce. I've been with the county for 3 years. I'm currently employed as the CAD administrator. I provide technical support for our CAD system, which is the computer system we use to take calls and dispatch them.
Thank you
Chris
so much.
Ledbetter. I am the CAD manager. I've been with Cobb 911 since 2006. The last 2 years I served as the CAD administrator, and as of last year promoted up as the CAD manager. Basically, I oversee the team that handles all the technical side of 911, including our computer-aided dispatch system as well as our phone system.
Destiny Davidson, the Emergency Communications Director. As you know, Joel, my background was from Cobb County Police Department. Started with the county in 1991 as a police officer and worked my way up to the rank of captain. I applied for this position and assumed it in January of 2016.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you.
My name is Todd Borowski. I'm currently one of the 2 training coordinators. I bring to the table over 25 years experience. The last 4 here down in Cobb County, where I moved recently. I'm responsible for the training, not just of all the new employees, but the continuing education of all the current employees. We have to meet a criteria every year. Our employees have to get so much annual training to keep up with the technology and just the business itself.
Okay. Thank you so much.
I'm Emily Mistretta. I'm a 911 dispatcher. I work on the floor answering the phone calls and dispatching the police and fire personnel.
Okay.
And I've been with Cobb since 2012.
Okay. Thank you so much.
And I'm Tracy Roberts, not Mike Ward.
Yes, all right. That's true. My apologies.
That's all right. I'm the radio system manager. I've been with the county going on 30 years now. I had the privilege of starting in the 911 center. I currently manage the public safety radio system. And it's not only the radio system, but the radios that are in the vehicles and that the officers and the firefighters and the dog catchers and the roads department, anybody that works with the county that has a radio, it's my responsibility. So I manage and maintain it, as well as the vendors who support our public safety radio system.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Just to help our audience, a few terms that I know that in your daily work, of course, everyone knows what these things mean, but maybe the listening audience may not be aware of them. For one thing, how long has Cobb County had a 911 system in place?
since
1987, sir.
Okay.
The 911 started in Alabama in 1968. That's when the first 911 call was made in a small town in Alabama, and Cobb County implemented the actual emergency 911 system in 1987.
Okay. And what is a CAD analyst?
For the CAD stands for Computer Aided Dispatch. It's a system through Motorola where we bring the calls in, we enter them into the system, determine the certain level of response and who it needs to be sent to, and once we've done that, we dispatch it to the correct either officer, fire, EMS personnel.
Okay. And what is an HMZ specialist?
That would be on the radio side of the house, and it's abbreviated acronym from megahertz, which is the frequencies that, well, it's the abbreviation for all frequencies. You have frequencies in the 150s, you got frequencies in the 450s, you got frequencies in 800, and they all end with hertz.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. And I believe earlier we talked about 800. So is that assigned to the public safety arena specifically?
It is public safety, and it's also, at some point, it was cross-bled, or it also had cellular in it for a while. But now they've divided up. So you can have public safety in the 800 spectrum, you can have cellular in the 800 spectrum. So yeah, both. If you want to go back to CAD in 1987, when I started in 911, there was no such thing as a CAD. It was writing your dispatch on a card. And so CAD is an improvement for dispatch response. It does things that we used to take a lot of time in order to write down, and then hand one card to a police dispatcher and one card to a fire dispatcher. So if you had a dual response, you're trying to write with two cards, initial amount. So CAD's a huge technology improvement.
Okay. All right. Well, that brings up a great point. So what are the technologies that are used in the 911 system?
Currently, our CAD vendors, Motorola, we have the Premier One Motorola CAD system. We use Entrado West for our phone system, as well as various other vendors that do various other things. We have a vendor that handles our school alarm system. We've just implemented Swift Breach, Swift 911, which is a mass notification service as well.
All right. So when you're receiving contact from people, it's always by way of telephone lines, correct? People aren't emailing you saying, I need an emergency situation.
Yes, sir. 911 calls, and just as recently as a couple years ago, we implemented text to 911, so we receive text messages as well.
All right. And with the area of working with making the phone calls from 911, do you service just unincorporated Cobb County, or do you also handle the calls for coming in for the cities that are located within Cobb County?
We handle fire and medical response for the cities of Ackworth and Kennesaw, as well as dispatch police and medical and fire for the city of Marietta, and then all of incorporated Cobb, as well as city of Powder Springs police and medical.
Okay. And now obviously, Ms. Davison, you're obviously the director of course at this point. Can you tell us a little bit about sort of what your office involves specifically?
Well, so my office is responsible for the overall management of the 911 operations, the technical side of it, and also the 800 megahertz. Very, very talented team. I'm fortunate to work with them. So my job basically is managing the budget, finding out what their needs are, and trying to achieve those needs.
And how large is the team?
We currently have 127 authorized positions. 101 of those are actually dispatchers, and the remaining is support. And then with 800 megahertz, they have a team of 4.
Okay, so it's not like the entire 911 team is here tonight in front of us.
No, actually, a third of the 911 team is actually at the 911 center right now, answering phone calls and dispatching our police and fire resources.
And where is the 911 team located in Cobb County?
It's co-located with the Cobb County Police Department headquarters.
Okay. So downtown Marietta?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you mentioned that there are 101 dispatchers, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And how many are typically on duty at any one time?
It can range from, we have 13 mandatory positions that are required, so it ranges anywhere up to 15 to 17, along with 3 supervisors.
Okay. And with the workstation that they're working, I guess what can you describe for our audience what your workstations sort of look like? Are you sitting in front of 20 computer monitors? Are you in an office by yourself with a phone only? How does each one of your workstations look?
Each workstation will have 3 monitors assigned just for the computer-aided dispatch portion of it, and an additional monitor for the phone side of it, and an additional monitor on top of that to the radio side.
Okay. All right.
If you go to the fireboard, you'll
And there's, correct, additional one for manual fire station alerting for our fire dispatchers.
Okay.
But to expound upon that, so basically you have a very large room with multiple workstations. Each of those has several computer monitors in front of them, and so they work as a team. They're subdivided up. One will handle, say, precinct 1 for Cobb County Police. One handles precinct 2. You have Marietta Police, precinct 3, 4, and 5, and then fire is situated. But they're all in the room together so they can communicate back and forth as needed.
And is everybody wearing a headset?
They're all wearing headsets, yes.
Okay. And so you've mentioned obviously Cobb Police, Cobb Fire, some of the cities.
Yes.
And you handle the Cobb County school system as well?
You want to elaborate on that?
We handle school alarms for Cobb schools. They work until the evening hours, and at that point, after Cobb School Police, they're no longer in service, then it turns over to the road officers to be dispatched out to the schools. We also dispatch for Cobb County Sheriff's Office.
And we say the school alarms, you mean like the fire alarms?
Fire alarms or police alarms.
Or police alarms, okay, okay. And with your particular systems, do you have the ability to see the number of whoever is calling you on your phone? Does it display on your systems, whether they tell you their phone number or not?
Yes.
You do, okay. And is that to come up right away when the call comes through and you answer?
Yeah, pretty much.
And so what happens if someone happens to be, they're not sure what jurisdiction they're in, they just know they have an emergency, like maybe they're in their car and they don't know, hey, am I in the city of Ackworth? Am I in Cobb County? I don't really know. And I call, what happens if they get the wrong 911 center? I mean, how does that get handled?
To place, you can make a 911 call off a landline or a cell phone. For us to actually send any type of response, emergency response, we need one of 3 things: an actual address location, possibly 2 cross streets or something like a landmark where we can narrow it in and know the area. The big thing is, as a training coordinator, my number one goal is to make people familiar with the area, the geographic area of Cobb County, to be able to assist publics when they call. It's unfortunately not many people own a landline anymore. So if we have a landline phone, a hard phone, you dial 911, your name, your address, and phone number will come up. Now, if you're dialing from a cell phone, which is probably 70% of the population nowadays, what we're going to get initially is your phone number, and it depends on, and I'll get into some technical part of it. If you're in phase 1, we'll get the tower it's bouncing off of, the tower site. If you have a GPS phone or a smartphone, it will eventually turn over to a phase 2, which we can plot a long information that pops up on our telephone screens, and we can put you within 50 meters of the call itself. So that's the extreme. If somebody does not know where they're at, we try to use the GPS, and we are able to plot. We use different mapping systems that we can just plug that lat long in, and we can narrow it down to an address, to intersections or whatnot be. And it seems like it's a long process, but it's really not as long as people think it is. As long as those phones can give us that information, we can find you in pretty short time.
Okay.
And if it does, Joel, if it does end up in the wrong jurisdiction, then they transfer the call to the appropriate jurisdiction once the location is verified.
Okay. Okay. I was actually that happened to me before. I actually thought I was in Smyrna. I was not. Apparently, I was in unincorporated Cobb. So first got Smyrna 911, and then it kind of routed me to Cobb County. So now, one thing you brought up the landline issue. Now, sometimes people hear from various companies who sell products that if you get rid of your landline phone, that 911 people can't find you anymore, and yet now your safety is in jeopardy. How do you respond to that statement?
Well, I would say that obviously a landline is a concrete physical address generally, but those are rapidly declining. As Todd mentioned, about 70% of the calls now are cellular phones. So it does present a challenge, but the technology is moving towards a direction to enhance your location services, and we're trying to stay abreast of that technology as much as possible.
Sure. Okay. So even if you decide to throw your landline out and just go with cellular phone as your home phone, cell phone, work phone, whatever, you're still going to be okay for the purposes of 911 accessing you in an emergency.
Sure. We do encourage you when the operator answers the phone that you provide your complete address. It's good to know your complete address, and it's amazing how many people don't actually know their home address, but that's a very important, valuable piece of information. That makes it the most accurate, and then we rely on latitude and longitude to narrow it down if you don't know where you are.
Okay. Well, can you talk a bit more about that process? How is it that, let's say you don't know, you get a caller either because they've never been to the place where they're calling from, or they're just hysterical, they can't give you their address or their coordinates or anything, so you have to go using whatever tools you have at your disposal. How does that work exactly? And how long does it take to try to figure out where they are, since they don't have the ability to tell you where they are?
Just to allude, to add to what Todd said, when it comes in on a cell phone, of course, we get it phase 1 first. Within usually 10 seconds, we get a phase 2, and that will actually give us the coordinates to plot in, to actually plot them into the system and get an approximate location, 15, 20 seconds at the most. And we pretty much have it narrowed down as to exactly where they're at.
The dispatchers will also start asking for what's considered common places. We have a lot of those built in. So, for instance, are you near the Big Chicken? Are you near a Kmart? Are you near a Walmart? Any other additional bits of information can help narrow it down if they don't know their actual physical address.
And we're able to coach them through if we get them down to an approximate location. Again, we can use those common places. Intersections, we encourage them, if you're in an accident, go up to the nearest stop sign because you'll have your intersections on there. Anything we can do that they can help us narrow down exactly where we're at. We have a general idea once we plot those points in.
I know there was some discussion earlier about sort of training and the training you have to go through to work in the system. Can you talk in some specifics about what length of time, what are exactly the protocols involved in training?
Sure. The training process starts with an academic phase, and that is a 4-week phase where we touch on all our department policies. We certify them in CPR, we certify them in emergency medical dispatch, and we certify them in emergency telecommunications. It's a certification, nationwide certification that everybody at Cobb County has, which is unique. Not all 911 centers have that. So it's already we're one step ahead. During that process, when we finish the actual academic phase, we go to what we call call-taking phase, where it's one-on-one training where the new employee sits with a trainer, communications training officer, or supervisor, and for 4 to 6 weeks, all they do is answer 911 and admin type calls. If they do enough or do well enough to progress and go on to the next step, it depends. A lot of it's based on the staffing. We have certain shifts that we can put them on where all they're doing is responsible is taking calls. They're not even dispatching quite yet. We found out over the last year or two that by taking a new employee and putting them as a call taker versus putting them straight from call taking training to somebody learning how to talk on a radio to the police and firemen, that we've been able to retain them better because we don't wash these people out. They're able to do the job better. So we try to get them to a call shift, and all they do from 2 to 3 months is answer 911 calls from 12 o'clock in the afternoon to 12 o'clock in the morning. And each caller will probably in that time frame take up to 200 calls in those 12 hours. So that's a lot of calls. So in that 2 to 3 months, it gains you a lot of experience. Once they complete that, we move them on where they go one-on-one once again with communications training officer where they learn the radio aspect of the job. That's the dispatch, like I said, the police, the fire, the EMS services that we provide in this county. That process lasts anywhere from 4 to 6 months. So if you're looking at the time frame, if you get a good employee, maybe six months. Employee who struggles or just needs a little bit more training, anywhere from 8 to 12 months of training. So at the end of the day, we have a lot invested on our employees. We do, as a training coordinator, as a training officer, as well as support from Destiny, our job is to make everybody succeed. The last thing we want to do is wash anybody out. Most of the people we don't retain leave on their own will. It's just not for them. It's not what they thought it. Maybe they didn't like the hours or whatever it could be. But we provide that training, including extra one-on-one training, to get them to get over whatever fears they may have or inabilities they have to do the job effectively.
And you mentioned the education piece. Is there a certain minimum amount of education, whether it's a high school diploma, it's a master's in criminal justice, or what is required exactly?
In Cobb County here, there's a few things that we require are the bare minimum. Is you got to be 18 years of age before we hire you. You have to be a U.S. citizen. You have to have a high school degree or diploma, no felonies. And as far as any type of misdemeanors, it's a case-by-case situation that they'll take a look at.
Okay. And as part of that training, are the potential applicants also given like psychological testing so that to see how they take stress or
So,
difficult situations?
Right after the online application, they do a quick data entry test just to assess their basic overall keyboarding skills. If they pass that, they're moved to the next phase where they're signed up to take the full comprehensive written test where they actually see some videos and have to take notes and that sort of thing. If they pass that with the minimum requirements, then their file is transferred to an investigator who will go into further discussions and interviews with them. You end up with a comprehensive background investigation, a psychological examination, a polygraph, a check of your criminal history and driver history. Obviously, you're working in public safety, so we want someone who's, of sound moral character. some sort of a credit check. They look at your employment history, if this applicable. A lot of our younger folks may not have a very long employment history, but stable work history if you've had a work history, reference checks, and finally a drug screening. So it's very comprehensive. Again, you're in public safety, you have access to a lot of sensitive information, and so we want to make sure the best and best and brightest are part of our organization.
And with the training, is this sort of a one and done? I got the course and now I'm trained, so I took the training 30 years ago. I'm just as trained now as I was 30 years ago? Or is there an ongoing, every year I've got to take 6 hours, 10 hours of ongoing training for this job?
Like I mentioned in my introduction, in Cobb County, the standards and our directives make it that we have to have at least 24 hours of annual training a year, every operator. And that could be, there's all different kinds of training out there. Dispatcher training, could be medical part, could be police part, could be stress, mental health. You know, our big thing is with the operators is we're concerned about their mental health and well-being. Being able to, when you're answering 200 phone calls for 12 hours for 2 or 3 months, they're not always positive phone calls, so it takes a toll on our employees. So our number one goal is always the health and welfare of our employees. So we provide them training such as that to go out there and realize what they can do to burn off a little stress. There's all kinds of training. We provide in-house training. We provide the training here at Cobb County government. They provide training, or we can even bring instructors who specialize in a certain field. We can bring them in, and they can provide the training to our employees.
We also have a lot of our supervisors, employees that attend professional organizational conferences every year as well.
And to piggyback off that, we also have certifications we have to keep up, CPR, GCIC certifications, as well as so many hours, I believe it's 8 for medical dispatch to keep that up.
Okay, all right. And so with respect to the shifts, you mentioned, I think 12-hour shifts, is that the norm for dispatchers to work 12-hour shifts, or is that on the unusual side?
No, that's our current shift operational schedule. So we have a 6 a.m. to p.m., 6 p.m., a 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., and then we have the 12 p.m. to 12 a.m. call taking only shift. So there's 2 components really of the 911. You have the folks that are answering the 911 calls for the citizens who are calling in, and then you also have the component of the dispatchers who are relaying that information to the fire and police and EMS responders that are out in the field. So the 12 to 12 is call taking only of answering 911 calls. The other 2 shifts, you're going to have a combined component of that.
Okay. And the people who work the 12-hour shifts, is this like a day on, a day off, a day on, a day off type thing?
Yes, so you work 2 on, 3 off, followed by 3 on, 2 off. So you end up working about an average of 14 to 15 days a month.
I know, like, we have a previous panel where we talked about with the fire department, they actually live at the station during the time they're on duty. So they're having meals together, they're taking showers, and then, and they're cleaning the place up, cutting the grass, all that kind of thing. Is that sort of the same relationship you have with dispatchers? They spend that kind of time, or is this they go and then they leave and they go home?
They typically go and leave and come back unless you have some sort of unplanned event, like a weather condition or that sort of thing. We had folks that had to stay over all night in cots, get nearby hotels, that sort of thing, just to ensure we had proper staffing levels. But they're typically, they're 12 hours, they're answering calls, about 11 of those in dispatching, and they get, of course, their hour lunch break, but there's not a lot of other activities. Okay.
And I think you mentioned earlier that the dispatchers are using radio to call out to the folks in the field who are doing the work. I guess, can you describe what does that look like? I mean, what does their equipment look like that they're using? Is it just like a simple microphone they wear around their heads as well, or is this like a huge panel in front of them? They're talking, into a little microphone. How does that work?
Our headsets have a mic that's attached to them, and then the bottom portion actually plugs into the console. And there's a foot pedal below the position, so when you're ready to key up to go out over the radio, you'll hit the pedal, and then you're basically a live mic. And it also doubles as when you answer a call, it also splits to the phone aspect of that too.
Okay. So if we should kind of walk through this, you say, so you get a call comes in, a dispatcher answers the call, they talk to that person, then where does it go next for this process, and up until the point where the person gets the relief that he or she is seeking?
Once it comes in, a call taker will handle it. They'll enter the call into the computer-aided dispatch system. When they send the call, it'll go based on the location or what type of call it is. If it's a medical or a fire call, it'll go to our fireboard dispatchers. And if it's a PD call, it'll go to the appropriate precinct that's the operator's working for them to actually dispatch it, to give it out over the radio.
And are you staying on the phone within the entire time? Or do you simply just call them the relevant coordinates and the situation, and then you just get off the phone?
It depends on the call type. For anything present clear danger there that's going to affect field personnel, we typically try to stay on the phone, get as much information. For minor calls, accidents, we get as much information as we can, and then we're pretty much done with the call. Anything that has an injury or something where we need to potentially give life-saving instructions, we'll stay on the line for.
And what about, are there predictable periods of time in a given week? You say, oh, it's Friday night, I know we're going to be slammed, or oh, it's Thursday at 12, we're going to be really quiet.
Typically, your Friday nights, Saturday nights, and rush hour, we get, of course, an abundance of accident calls just because of the vast volume of people on the road at one given time.
And of course, any kind of inclement weather events, you can anticipate that the call volume will grow substantially.
Right. Well, now, the Friday night and Saturday night calls, you said the volume obviously increases. What kind of calls are you getting at that point? Typically, what do you see a lot of?
So those are going to be your intoxicated people calls, your increase in domestic disputes, an increase in bar fights. As you get later on to the weekend hours and the early morning hours, you might have an increase of maybe your armed robberies at your local convenience stores and that sort of thing. So it varies, but usually the later it gets on the weekends, the more alcohol has been consumed by the public, the call volume typically goes up.
But and these are fairly predictable patterns you see. I mean,
Yes.
I realize that every week can be a little different, but you have a fairly good idea. This is what my week's how it's going to play out.
Typically, yes. There's always, an anomaly, but typically, yes.
Right. Yes.
Can we expand on the radio
course.
side of the house?
It-
Because there's
sure.
been a huge technology improvement since 1987.
Sure.
And back in 1987, you can actually go back to like the Andy Griffin style where you have one frequency, you communicate to officers on that one frequency. If you weren't very good at recognizing voices on the radio, sometimes it got a little bit difficult to identify who was communicating. So, and nowadays it's more modern, it's almost computer generated. And the dispatchers can actually see which radio is transmitting, and it identifies that it's this portable or this mobile. That the computer also allows them from that one position to have access to up to, in our radio system, up to at least 200 different channels on our radio system that they can communicate with. So the radio system technology has improved greatly since 1987. It also has, on public safety side, they have a panic button on the radios. So if they get in a situation where they can't communicate, it alerts the dispatcher that, hey, you got an officer in trouble, and they can start sending assistance to them as well. So there's been an advancement on the radio side of the house that they get to interface with on a daily basis. But their main interface is with CAD. So unless something like that occurs, the radio side of the house, it's in their ear, like Chris talked about.
And I would assume since the public safety department uses a specific megahertz frequency to communicate on, those are things that, like the average citizen can't go out and get on that megahertz signal. Correct? They're not going to be operating that same frequency.
Yeah, they wouldn't be able to buy a radio for public use in the same frequency band that public safety is using. Correct.
Okay. Now, since we live in an era, of course, of increased technology and people talk about hacking and things being broken into, are there protections in place that they have for 911 to protect against those kind of interventions? If someone wants to try to break into the megahertz for the, that you're calling out on or whatever, are there things that are put in place to kind of thwart that? I mean, that's people. So just because again, people might try to get involved or play amateur police officer or whatever the case may be.
Yes, all of our CAD systems are linked to the internet. Excuse me. There's no way for somebody to hack directly into our CAD system. It's a closed network. There's no way to get anything out or into the system. So if you're trying to hack into it, there's nowhere to connect. And any internet access we have is on a separate console. So even if somebody did hack in, it could never jeopardize the dispatching call taking system.
Okay. And is there a backup system to 911? So if maybe like you have backup generators for electricity, is there a similar thing in place for 911 itself in case the primary system somehow has a catastrophic breakdown?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
We don't elaborate on the location of that.
Of course.
There is another backup center.
But the main thing is that there is such a thing.
Yes.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Yeah, we sort of don't want to be giving out state secrets here, so don't want to be doing that. Now, I know there was some discussion earlier about Swift 911. Can you tell our audience what is Swift 911? How does that work?
So Swift Reach, if the public remembers, previously the county operated Code Red, which was basically a reverse 911 that came from the 911 center to your landline. We no longer have a contract with that vendor. For a period of time, we also utilized Nixle. which was a mass notification, and we've gone away from that vendor. So SwiftReach is our new vendor that we're using, where you can basically, you create an account, you go in and you sign up, you opt in for particular types of alerts. So currently the 4 or 5 categories we have are severe weather, traffic accidents that are going to cause a significant and lengthy delay, armed or dangerous persons in the area, missing and endangered persons, and then any other large-scale event that's going to draw a lot of attention, a lot of emergency vehicles. We want to get the information out to the public so that they don't start calling 911 asking what's going on. You want to add anything to it, Chris?
They can opt in via their mobile devices through the App Store. It's available Android, iOS, or Windows Phone. They can opt in from the Cobb County government, cobbcounty.org site. To go on there and go to news and alerts, there's a link for them to sign on there, or they can go to swiftreach.com. And it's really easy to sign up. Once you sign up, then you'll have the list of opt-in groups, and you can just pretty much pick and choose which ones you want to get notification for.
And one thing to keep in mind as well, so you can enter your home address, which might be your primary address that you're interested in, but let's say you have an aging parent down the street or a child that goes to a school down the street, you can enter other addresses that you're interested in knowing about if there's critical events in that area, and you'll get that notification as well.
Okay. So other than the app, what other ways, if you want to blast that information to the public, how do you do that? If you want to be proactive and say, hey, okay, there's an ice storm coming. Are you guys using the DOT signs to do that? Are you sending out mass emails that go to people's email address they provided you previously? Again, assuming they don't have the app. I mean, how are you getting to people to be proactive and get out the word to them?
Well, we're trying really hard to get across with the app right now.
Right.
So obviously the county has a number of ways to broadcast about several things, but from a public safety perspective, SwiftReach will be our primary notification for those type of incidents that I just mentioned. And so, we recently acquired this new vendor. We're encouraging people to sign up for it. Our goal is not to abuse it so that people, don't want to hear it anymore.
Right.
But that is our current best notification system that we can do. I mean, we have weather sirens, that sort of thing, and there's radio, but all of that's delayed. So we're hoping that if we can increase, our interest in SwiftReach, that we can drive the message out that way. And basically that message is coming from the public information officer who will be assigned to that event, whether that's a fire PIO or a police PIO. They'll be responsible for sending that information out because they have the most accurate information from the field level.
And you mentioned the sirens that are alerting people about weather conditions. Is that your department who's in charge of that as well?
That's EMA.
Okay.
Our Emergency Management Agency.
Okay. All right. And what about the calls that, in the past, people have often gotten like a text message to their phone and it's kind of a loud kind of shrieking sound that says, hey, it's an Amber Alert, please be on the lookout. You'll be in somebody's office, all of a sudden phones are going off one by one by one. Is that EMA as well?
That's handled by the state.
The state, okay. All right. So your office is not involved in that process?
We're going to try to piggyback off of that and to use an extra layer of notification, but there's certain requirements from the state that they have to reach in order for you to do an Amber Alert. So we can still use it for other situations as well.
Okay. Okay. Now, I know you mentioned the impact of inclement weather on your work. I mean, can you sort of tell how do you, in the case of like a snowstorm, for example, you see it coming, it's coming because you've got radar and you've got weather reports. How do you prepare as an agency for those sorts of things specific to Cobb County?
So we work closely with our EMA partners to provide cots and blankets and that sort of thing. If we see it coming, we bring employees in ahead of it. We've had employees that stay overnight, and we also work with our police and fire partners, and they'll go out and pick up our 911 operators if their vehicle is not equipped to travel in the inclement weather.
And how do you handle if in a case of a snowstorm, let's say somebody, you have an emergency on a particular street and you've got, 10 neighbors on that street, you get 8 phone calls about the exact same thing. I mean, how do you handle call 2 through 8 when 2 through 8 concern the exact same thing that call 1 handled? How do you address that as a agency?
We just let them know that the call's already been handled and that the resources are on the way. We can't stop the phone calls from coming in.
Sure.
And it does become taxing, but that's how they handle it. They just let them know the resources are on the way.
Okay. Now, one thing I think you also hear from people in the public too is they'll say, well, I only want to call 911 in an extreme emergency. Like if I see a person breaking in my neighbor's house next door, I'm not going to call 911. That's not an emergency. Do you do you subscribe to that philosophy, or do you say go ahead and please make that phone call and then we take it from there?
Absolutely. So seeing someone break into your neighbor's home is an absolute emergency. If you take the time to dial a 7-digit number and of course they don't have the same level of urgency to be answered as a 911 call, you're delaying the response. That person's going to actually have the time to break into your neighbor's home, and the law enforcement officers are not going to have an ample opportunity to go out there and apprehend that person. So anything that's in progress, where there's imminent danger or imminent property damage, accidents with injuries, all of that, we suggest you go ahead and call 911. That's the most expeditious route to get the resources out to you. If it's something that happened 2 or 3 days ago, somebody hit your mailbox, somebody stole your porcelain duck off your porch, those kind of things can be directed to the non-emergency number or to your local precinct.
Sure. Okay. So the folks who are listening, the message you want to get out about that issue is don't be bashful. Call 911 if it's something in progress.
Absolutely, Joel. That's what we
And
encourage folks to do.
it doesn't have to be somebody having a heart attack or something like that. It could be your neighbor's house getting broken into. That's just as valid for 911 as
Correct. And so we manage, the field units are going to manage their resources, and if someone's going to a call that's not as high priority and another higher priority calls in, they're going to reroute their resources. So you're not going to be diverting those from somebody that needs the resources more.
Well, and that's a great point you raised. How does the agency handle, so you get 40 calls coming in all at one time, which may be low, maybe you get a lot more than that. Just say 40 is your number. How do you prioritize which ones to give attention to internally? What kind of decision making goes into that?
Obviously, any call that has an immediate life-threatening component to it is going to get higher priority than something that's already occurred or something that's just suspicious. So the protocols are built into place, the signals and codes, the information that the questions they're asking from the caller, those are all going to work together. And when they start putting that information out to the field, then you have also supervisors in the field that may say, that can override and say, I prefer the resources go to this than to that. So it's sort of a joint effort. You want to elaborate on?
At least from a fire or medical standpoint, any call that comes in, it's pretty much high priority. So we're dispatching immediately for all your fire and medical emergencies.
Okay. All right. So this is something this is decided at the dispatcher level. At that point, it's decided to figure out which call to kind of give priority to. Is that a fair statement?
It's a fair statement. Once again, it's all based on training. Knowing what our different call types are and what priority is assigned to each. That's how the calls are going to be disseminated and dispatched. At the same time, if we have calls holding or pending, it's up to the dispatcher's responsibility to notify the field supervisor or sergeant so he can make a decision based on, okay, these officers in this precinct and these beat are tied up. Let's start some officers in a different beat. Might take a little while, but at least we'll get them started. And, if these other ones are free, great, we can get them. But until then, we do have the help come in as need be. And like Chris said, just elaborating on it, when it comes to the fire and EMS part of the thing, what people need to understand is if you're the fire guys across street, station 19 or whatever, that's your fire station. If they're tied up on another call, the computer itself will be able to select the next closest fire station. So if people think there's a delay, it's not because the firemen are out, cooking dinner or whatever. It's because the resources are gone. But we also have the capability of providing the next closest resource. So people need to understand that.
Okay. Now, do you have within your stations where you operate? Do you have places where employees can kind of go and sort of relax or decompress for a little bit while they're still on their shift?
Yes, we did. One of the things that we were able to implement in 2016 was the addition of 2 quiet rooms. At the time, there was no place you could go to the bathroom where you could go in the kitchen and shut the door, and of course people were in and out. So we were able to get approval for funding for that. We built the 2 quiet rooms. So one has a full-length sofa, and then one also has a recliner. And we use that one also for our new mothers as well who need privacy. So you can take your break in there, your lunch break if you want to choose to use your lunch break to take a nap or something along those lines, or if you just had a particularly stressful call and you just go in there and unwind, you can go in there and be alone.
Okay. All right. And we've had that for how long?
They were completed, I guess, built out, I believe, in, I think it was October of 2016.
Okay.
And we're just now finishing out the furnishings and everything, so they're starting to be used.
Oh, great. Right. Okay. Now, if there are there efforts that the department makes in order to recruit talent to work for them, like you go and either go to job fairs or you post things on, Indeed.com or whatever. How does that work?
So right now we are trying to increase our advertising campaign. The most important, I think, factor is to get the word out to the public. Currently we have 5 digital billboards throughout Cobb County. that we're advertising. We have two recruiters / background investigators that are assigned to the Internal Affairs Division to handle that. We're also working with our Internal Affairs team and our education team to send folks out to our area high schools, and they will network with the career counselors. And I'll let Todd elaborate on some of the work he's done. The school system is a perfect ground to look for applicants, especially if you're a senior, you're about to graduate. Perhaps you don't, you're not headed immediately into college, or you have more technical skills, you're not planning on going to college. If you have your high school diploma and you've kept yourself pretty straight and squared away, it's an excellent opportunity to come in entry level with no experience and make a reasonable salary and benefits.
Okay, great.
But we also advertise other ways, AJC, Indeed.com, and some different areas on the internet as well.
And again, I didn't mean to give them a plug. I was just trying to give an example of some resources you might use. You had some things you want to add about sort of the efforts you do, like reaching out to high schools?
Right now, we're working with North Cobb High School. They have and I think somebody mentioned earlier, Dr. Reagan there at North Cobb High School runs a program. I think it's like a criminal justice program. And we just started this semester today, actually, where we go in there, we provide 5 weeks of different type of, like today was introductions about the 911 job. Next week is handling police type incidents, in which we'll bring in actual recordings from the 911 center, and we'll actually talk to the students about what type of calls these are, how do we classify them. Then we're going to go on to the medical aspect of the job. And we do a mock interview session with them where we come in, we bring in some of our professionals from the 911 center, where we sit down with the students and we do mock interviews based on our 911, what we need or what we're looking for. And they can take that and go out and find other jobs in the future, whatever it may be, but we're there to supply the support to them. And finally, one of our last things we do is we bring them into the 911 center, let them sit down with some of our professionals, listen to some calls, listen to some dispatches, get some real life experience to see if this is really what they want. We're really trying to recruit that younger generation. It's tough out there. Everybody's everybody's fighting for the same chunk out there. But with the technology out there, and we just touched on a very little bit of technology. The thing about the 911, there's so much more out there. There's a program called Next Generation 911. That's when they want us to be able to, when people send you phones, pictures, videos, and whatnot. The only problem with that is who's going to fund that? How are you going to store that information? And my big thing is we get back to health and welfare of a 911 dispatcher. Do I want my dispatcher to see someone being assaulted? Do I want to see him get ran over by a car? What do we do with that information? How do we treat our employees who are witnessing that? So it's out there. It's going to happen eventually. Like I said, the biggest thing is financially, who's going to pay for that? All I know for a fact is to hold that kind of information, you need a room this size with servers to be able to hold that information. And then you got your privacy issues, of course, with that. And how long do you hold that information? So the technology is coming. Technology is always going to be the advancement of how much more service can we provide in a quicker time, of course. Right now with the E911, emergency 911, they get there as fast as they can, and they're getting there real fast. I know Cobb County is unique. I come from the north, where I had 20 years experience, and I never seen traffic in my life until I moved to Cobb County. And the officers, they have, based on the call types, their policies or directives on how they respond is important. Like you said, it took you an hour and 45 minutes to get here. Imagine an officer coming to a low priority call. He's got to follow the laws, rules of the road too. So, we can only put out so many officers or firemen, and we can only provide so many dispatchers. Things are just moving at a hectic pace in Cobb County. As a citizen, I live in the county. I live in West Cobb. I'm proud to say I do. I'm proud of the service that we provide. And if I ever needed 911, I know that they would be there as soon as they can.
Okay. Has the approach that you've used to try to recruit people changed, like now, as compared to maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago? Are you doing something different now that you would have done 10 years ago or 5 years ago to find?
I think the biggest thing is we're looking for career-minded individuals. When you talk about 911 or dispatcher, back in the day, Tracy would know, it was a stepping stone. I want to be a fireman, a policeman, a paramedic, whatever. With the technology and training that we put in and we invest in employee right now, we want them to be career employees. That includes maybe looking at the financial package, to make them a career employee. We hate to just train people and then lose them. Even if they're going to the other parts of public service, we understand. At the same time, we're looking for those career employees who got the experience. When we talk about when people dial 911 not knowing where they're at, a lot of times it's just because the employee knows the area. You could throw all the technology out the door you want. If you say, I'm at this Kmart off Mapleton Avenue, that employee knows exactly where you're at, because experience. You can't replace any of that technology, based on experience. So we're really trying to push for career-minded individuals, career-minded people. It's not, like I said, it's not for everybody, but the people that are there, they're making it a career, and they leave, fulfilled at the end of it.
Great. Okay. Now, with one of the things I think has been touched on too is the technology and the use of texting with respect to 911. Can you kind of talk about sort of like where we are in the county with that process and the ability to use text messaging as a way to notify the department of an emergency?
Yes, sir. 2 years ago, we've implemented text to 911. Currently, right now, anybody that's within Cobb County, they picked up the phone and they wanted to text 911. It's operational. It's ready to go. We still encourage, if at all possible, for a caller to make a voice call. It's easier for the relay of information, but if you're in a situation where you can't make that voice call, or it's detrimental to your own safety to do a text call, the technology certainly it's there. It's good to go.
Okay. And you said it's been about 2 years now that you've had that ability?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I guess that would be certainly ideal for someone if they were like in a situation like they're in a house and they may be intruders in the house and they want to hide somewhere and use
That's a perfect example as to when to use it.
Okay. All right.
Let me elaborate a little bit about texting. The real big demographics of who's using it a lot is the hearing impaired people. Before the old-fashioned TDD, telecommunicator device that they use, but nowadays they have smartphones and they know how to use it like the rest of us. So the hearing impaired people, they can just text us like a normal person, and we provide whatever service they're looking for.
Okay. And are those calls fielded by someone different than the ones are covering the phones?
Yes, sir. It's the same call takers we have now.
Okay. So they're all saying the same thing, whether it's phone or it's texting that's coming into that
Yes,
person
sir.
or persons.
They're all cross-trained to take text 911 calls just as simple as they are the voice 911 calls.
Okay. Are there any other kind of trends, technologically speaking, in your industry that are coming down the pike in terms of notifying folks about emergency needs and trying to get dispatch for 911 besides texting and phone? Or are there any other technology here coming down the pike?
Like I mentioned, the next generation 911, it's going to be the videos. It's going to be sending pictures and stuff like that. A big thing out there now is consolidation of dispatch centers, meaning, we don't dispatch for Smyrna or Kennesaw or whatever, but some agencies or in some rural counties, they've consolidated all their services and made a central dispatch system. It's more of a money cutting thing. That is, if everybody's providing the same service, why can't you just funnel it all through one agency? So that's nationwide. That's a big thing, is consolidation.
Okay. I'd be curious to hear from each one of you. What's a misconception that people probably have about the work you do and how your work operates?
Emily, would you like to join in on that?
Misconception, probably that we just sit there and stare at the screens all day. I mean, essentially we do, but we have the ability to stand up at our consoles, and we have a tether that keeps us attached, but we can walk around and we can still, when we don't have a call coming in or when we don't have any officers on a call, we can still be normal people. And we eat at our desks. That's our house for 12 hours basically, but or we don't just sit there and twiddle our thumbs.
The best one I could think of is the misconception I've had callers actually say just because you're a call taker and you're dispatching it doesn't mean, as long as we're keeping you on the line, doesn't mean that we're delaying sending help. Just because you're talking to that person, that's not necessarily the person that's going to be dispatching the help to you. So once the call taker's taking the call, they're immediately entering the information as you're giving it to them on the phone, and they're putting it in the system. Simultaneously, it's also going to that dispatcher who is now dispatching it out and relaying that information over the radio. So just because the call taker's wanting to keep you landline doesn't mean that that's keeping us from sending them out. We're getting that additional information for PD or fire, especially with the medical calls. A lot of those where we stay on the line with them, not just to pry information from them. We use that information to relay aid until help can get there. There are a lot of different life-saving things that we can give over the phone to best help them before help can arrive.
So in other words, a 5-minute phone call with a dispatcher is not going to cause them to be later receiving help than a 30-second phone call.
Correct.
Okay. Any other common misconceptions that you
Not
think?
really. That's one of the biggest ones probably that we have is that, especially with medical calls, that's when you're going to get your frantic caller who might have walked in on somebody who had passed out, and they are just frantic and scared. As soon as we get the information, we enter that call. Us asking further questions, specifically with medical calls, we have to get age and if they're breathing. I mean, important things that the paramedics need to decide what kind of equipment they will need. Once we get that call, it's entered and they're going. Talking to us or answering any more questions doesn't stop them. It actually helps them.
Okay. And I think you gave a great point. If you have a caller on the phone and they're hysterical, they're crying, they're shrieking, they're beside themselves, they're clearly in a very emotional state. What part about your training helps to deal with that? Because I realize you probably have to bring the temperature down on the phone call a little bit. What about your training helps you to deal with that, and what sort of things do you learn to do to help?
They teach us in the very beginning coping methods on one, how to deal with our own stress and to kind of keep us level so we can keep the caller, kind of de-escalate the situation and reassure that we're getting the help started and kind of help them understand the help is already coming. That off the bat kind of lets them be a little less stressed because they know help is coming and it'll be there soon.
Okay.
And Joel, I'll say something from, as I told you before, I came from the police department, so I actually was on the receiving end of the dispatcher who's up at the 911 center. And one of the things that I've learned since transferring over is when you're a first responder, you get out there to the scene, you find out it either is really bad or maybe it's not as bad, but you have some closure once you leave that call. So for the 911 operator who stays up in the room and really doesn't get to see the end result, there's a lot of stress placed on them because they're still, all they heard was the bad call and the frantic mother or the screaming person. And when they don't get the closure to that, whatever the incident was in the field, that kind of stress continues to haunt them. So that's something that I was not aware of as a field responder.
And that's a great point. How do they help the person? Because as you say, the dispatcher only hears the bad stuff. They may not realize that on the other end that the call has actually turned out much better. How do you help them deal with that stress? Because that's obviously got to be pretty anxiety producing, I would imagine, for a dispatcher.
Todd, do you want to talk a little bit about the stress?
Sure. There's a couple things, if it's somewhere, it's based on the needs of the department or what's going on at the time. If they can get up, a lot of them just want to be able to get up, get some fresh air, get something to eat, just walk away, think about it. Other people, they want to take the next call, or they want to get it out. They just want to get it over with. Cobb County also provides the EAP, Employee Assistance Program. If it comes to the point where stress is too much, whatever it may be, or something else is going on, we can provide that. And recently, there's been a few employees who have been taking some classes on what we call peer counseling, where we're hoping to complete that training here in the next month or two, where we're going to have actual employees, and it's going to be not just the police side, fire departments involved, City of Marietta, Cobb Police PD, where you can sit and talk to another employee face to face, and if you have an issue, and we're going to provide that counseling for you, because we understand, like Destiny said, we don't get the closure. That's like the number one thing. We just don't get that closure. And like I've mentioned, and I'll mention 100 more times, mental health is a huge part of this job, where people just hit that wall at a certain, I'd say about 5 to 7 years. I can see it in their eyes. I can see when they're about ready to walk away. They either got to make that decision. Is this too much, or I can make this a career? And it's all based on the stress of the job. Now, we try to tell the employees in training, leave that stress at the door. We all have problems at home when we walk in the door. And you can see that when they walk in too. The last thing you want to do is have an employee who's had a situation at the home come in and now they're taking a call about the same exact thing. But it's going to happen. They got to be able to separate that. We're professionals. We have a job. Our supervisors are trained. Our administrative staff is trained is to be able to recognize these problems and address them and provide whatever assistance is necessary.
Well, yeah, I think you touched on a good point, which is it doesn't take very long to go either online or you hear stories in the media about dispatchers, and they hear some pretty horrific things on the phone. They hear shootings, screaming, people falling, crashing sounds. I mean, those are all things I would imagine would produce a lot of anxiety to someone just listening to that. I mean, regardless of whether you've been doing this for 2 years or 20 years.
Right, and that's where, a lot of employees, when they go on their lunch, what they do is they go down to the workout facility at Cobb County headquarters, their 911 building, and whether they run, lift weights, or whatever it may be, a lot of employees use that, and that's the approach we try to take, something healthy. All right, we don't want nothing to push you over the other edge. We want something to do healthy. A lot of people, it's just going home to their families and talking it out. And you talked a little bit about the cohesiveness of the fire department. When you talk about shifts at 911, they're a family. They're very cohesive. Emily can talk about that too. Is when you're with those people every holiday, your birthdays, snowstorms, whatnot, you become really close, and you rely on each other to get the job done. Right? When it gets busy and you can't handle it, or it's above you, you got to rely on your partner to, whether it's make a notification to another agency, or you need to take my radio, I got to get up for a second, stuff like that. So we encourage the cohesiveness. We encourage the rah teamwork, and that's what gets people through the 12 hours each and every day.
So there is a natural camaraderie amongst.
Oh, there's a huge.
Yeah.
It's almost like a competition between shifts because everybody wants to be the best. There's a lot of A-type personalities that do this job because you have to be able to to deal with, like you said, a shooting, a baby not breathing or whatnot, stuff like that happens. Cobb's a big area. We took in over 700,000 calls last year. We made 300,000 calls, outgoing calls, so that's 1 million phone calls. That's just phone calls, not dispatches. So that's a lot of work based on, 13, like Destiny said, it's usually 15 and 22 people assigned per shift. However you break that down, that's a lot of work on somebody.
Now, what about another component of this? What about of course, you also hear stories on the news too about dispatchers who are rude or insensitive, or they make poor judgments about things. And again, I'm not speaking about Cobb. I'm saying just in the news stories you hear about that. How do you train? How do you deal with that, especially when it comes out? Because you can appreciate where those are probably not great stories. I'm sure most departments would not be thrilled if those things come out in the news. How do you deal with those situations in terms of training or behavior modifications or things of that nature?
Well, Joel, I'll say from day one, from the interview process, at least for the employees that I've had the opportunity to hire since I came over, there's a couple of things that we say straight up is that we want you to be respectful both internally to your coworkers and externally to the public. No one calls you when they're having a good day. And, don't let them push you to the point where you're going to make an inappropriate or insensitive comment. It's a recorded line, it's open records. Tap out, go to your supervisor, ask somebody else to step in before you cross over that line. Because again, no one calls 911 because they're having a good day. Right. And so, they're human beings just like everyone else. But we take each incident or complaint on its own merits and evaluate what the best course of action is going forward, whether it's retraining or some counseling or that sort of thing.
Okay. Now, of course, there are, I'm guessing, some amusing moments, too. You also hear stories about people calling and somebody being upset about their drive-through fast food order or their, things like that they call it clearly are not emergencies. How do you deal with those calls?
Well, and the number one thing is customer service. I just took a call, or my training did last week, about somebody called. They want to know about time change coming up. If it takes us 5 seconds to let that person know, it takes 5 seconds. We're not going to be rude to them. We're not going to tell them, hang up the phone call and dial operator or 414 or 411. We will try our best to provide customer service, or at least take them to, lead them off to somewhere else to get their information. Right. But that's our number one job is the customer service. We start, like Destiny said, from the hiring process through the training process to the end is the customer service, is giving back to the community. Everybody lives in a community. They don't all live in Cobb, of course, but they live in a community that they're proud of. We expect them to be able to take that as a worker and also, show the citizens that we really do care, which we do care, because it could be our loved ones on the other line.
And how does your training address situations where your caller or your person contacting may be a small child as opposed to an adult? How do you deal with those situations differently in your training or in your actual experience?
Actually, I find that you get more information from child callers, a little bit more level-headed than the screaming parent.
I like talking to younger children, younger callers. I have 3 kids of my own, so that to me is more normal talk than it is with an adult. But like he said, you can get almost better information from a child than you would an adult, because if it is a very stressful situation, they don't understand that stress, so they can talk to you more calmly and explain the situation much better than somebody who does understand what's happening, who might be, screaming or crying.
They're usually a little more honest as well about what's going on. Mommy's doing this, daddy's doing this. They don't have any preconceived notions about what people are doing or expecting to be doing, so they're just more honest. They're more straightforward with you, and it's easier to get the information you need instead of trying to explain to you why this happened. They just say, Mommy did this, Daddy did this, Daddy needs help. Not, well, yesterday I was doing this.
Right. So. Less cover stories. Huh?
Exactly. Straight to the point. It's refreshing.
Oh, okay. What about people who might have emergency services who don't speak English as their primary language? How do you handle those situations?
We can't, go ahead.
Oh, well, right now we have an agreement with AT&T to use their language line services. So basically, it's a one-button transfer when they call in, and it gets an interpreter on the line, and we tell them which language they need, and then we just relay the information through the third party.
And are the number of languages you have access to pretty large, like over 100 or?
I hadn't came across one where they
180.
didn't. 180?
180.
Yeah, there's never been a situation that I'm aware of that they weren't prepared for.
Okay. And that's something that people can do right now. If they had an emergency, they could, if they spoke, I don't know, Vietnamese or French or something, they
Oh
could.
yeah, definitely. We get them daily, multiple times daily, actually.
Okay. So that doesn't really slow you down at all in your process. You're able to hit that button, get the caller on the phone, and get the call service, and take it from there.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Now, are there particular parts of the county that you find from your experience where you typically see more calls you receive for service, whether it's West Cobb, North Cobb, East Cobb, South
Well,
Cobb?
different types of calls. So anywhere where your interstates are going to run through it, you're going to get more calls because, of course, you got more accidents, more people on the road, more situations tend to occur in and around the interstates. So usually those areas you get a higher call volume, and there's specific call types like your accidents and stuff like that.
I think it depends on population as well, obviously.
It falls to people, wherever the people are that
Right.
day, or during the day. In the middle of the day, we might get more, Cumberland area with a lot of people go down there to work, so people are getting in car accidents. In the afternoon, people are at home, so it's kind of spread out a little bit more. Just
Okay. And you were starting to say something?
It just depends on the population. Like, in my opinion, West Cobb isn't as populated as, say, East Cobb or in South Cobb. So West Cobb probably won't get as many calls per day as one of the other jurisdictions might. So they will be busy doing, what they do on a daily basis, but may not have as many calls to dispatch as one of their neighboring jurisdictions. It just because of population.
Okay. And one of the things that we've also been asked about are how do you handle situations where if somebody does a crank call to 911? Obviously, you wouldn't encourage that behavior, but if somebody thought that'd be funny to do, how do you handle that in your daily experience?
Well, the great thing about getting latitude and longitude, we can find out where they're at, and if need be, children seem to be a bigger proponent of it. Just playing around on the phone. And if we're able to find out where they're at, we'll send an officer out there to kind of discuss it with them. As best as we can, we try to get an adult on the phone just to figure out, what's going on. If there's actually an emergency there, and
Yeah,
if we can't do that, then we'll send an officer out to speak to an adult.
If it's a much younger child who might just be playing on the phone, or mom or dad gave them a phone that they thought doesn't work anymore, it still dials 911. Even if it's not registered to an account, it can still dial 911, period.
any cell phone with power will dial 911.
Right. So if
even
it's just a child who might be playing on a phone that they thought didn't work, we try and get an adult on the line just to say, hey, it's okay if they want to play with the phone, but take the battery out. So make sure nothing's going on. And like he said, if it's, a kid who's actually really trying to play a prank or, think he's being funny, then yeah, we try and track him down.
Okay.
We also get a lot of pocket dials. People just have it, they're butt dialing us and stuff like that. But one of the things we try and tell everybody is if you accidentally call 911 and it starts to ring, don't just hang up. Just wait for us to pick up and say, sorry, I didn't mean to call you, and we'll disconnect, because if we get a missed call, we have to call you back. And it can, we'll spend more time calling people back who don't need help than we will, actually answering that call and you just saying, I don't need anything.
Okay. Well, that's a good point. That's a good point to know. Are there programs in Cobb that teach kids about sort of how to handle themselves in a situation where they're using 911 or have a need for 911?
We currently have an education team that Cobb County 911 utilizes, and they do a lot of community work, especially at the schools with smaller children, elementary schools, and where we go and basically just teach them when to use 911, when it's most appropriate to use 911.
And also, Joel, you've been involved heavily with the safety blitzes, especially around the South Cobb area. And we always have our education team down there, and they're set up with their booth to help educate the children down there as well.
Okay, great. And with respect to 911 calls, do they typically, is this a situation where they just take the information down and dispatch a call, or do they actually provide advice? Like if someone is in a situation like maybe an active shooter or some ongoing situation, does the dispatcher give advice to that person and say, this is what you need to do, you need to go hide here or go do that, or how does that work?
About EMD, talk about EMD real quick.
If it's a medical call, let's start with that, is we have a medical program that we use, a software program, and it's a nationwide accredited program where we follow a script word for word, actually, and that's how we can determine your proper response. Somebody having chest pains or heart attack, it's what we call an ALS response, advanced life support. Someone stubs their toe, it's more of a BLS, basic life support, or just an ambulance call. As far as the police type calls that you talk about, active shooter, whatever,
Correct.
our number one thing is we always tell people if it's safe to do so. Those are our key words. We teach that from day one. We put that back on the caller because we're not there. We can only do what they see it, we don't see it. So we tell them if it's safe to do so. An active shooter, of course, you know, if they can get out safely, you're going to get out safely. If you need to barricade the door, barricade the door. But at the same time, you need to tell us how many people are in your room, what's your room number, stuff like that. So when the first responders come in and they're going to go in methodically clearing the building, room by room, they're going to know, okay, room 341 at this location, there's 6 people, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's code 4. Let's go to the next room. So we provide some type of a pre-arrival instructions on almost every type of call if need be. The citizens' safety is our number one regard when it comes to that.
And to piggyback off that, the medical dispatch portion, we get asked a lot when you're taking a medical call and you're asking all these questions, and sometimes you'll get callers at, well, why are you asking all these questions? Well, a lot of those questions based on the answers, feed into what advice we give them at the end of the call. Sometimes that advice will be something that they don't really think about, such as taking aspirin when it's appropriate to take it. It's just these things that will help the situation that they don't realize until we give them that advice, and it's all based on the answers from the questions that we're asking.
Okay. Well, I guess that's a good point. Let's sort of unpack this, talking about the medical calls you get. So if the person is someone who's calling you is calling on behalf of another person, maybe he's having a heart attack, they're having a seizure, having a stroke, something like that, you're on the phone, you're actually giving them advice on how to provide assistance to that person?
Correct.
Okay. And do you typically don't, you stay on the call and you keep talking them through the situation, I guess, until either the ambulance is dispatched or the fire department's dispatched? Is that how that works?
In a lot of cases where it's somebody unconscious, CPR or anything like that, we will remain on the line until fire department actually gets there. So we're rendering aid over the phone until somebody's there to actually take over.
Okay. Now, I'm sure, I know CPR has changed too. I mean, I guess the CPR that you probably learned in high school is probably a little different than the CPR you learned today. Can you kind of tell the audience a little bit, how has that technique changed? Just basic changes, I guess. I mean, like what
The
things.
basics changes.
It's gone to compressions first.
Right,
as
versus,
opposed to,
you're not going to get much where we say give them some breaths or whatever. It's mostly about the chest compressions.
So you got away from the mouth to mouth,
Right.
which I'm sure some people probably, if it's a stranger, they may be eager to jump in and help.
More people are willing to render aid if they don't have to, do mouth to mouth with possibly a total stranger.
Right. I can see that. Okay. Now, again, going to the situation involving like an event that's like a police type matter, where it's either an active shooter or something like that. You're on the phone too with that person, saying, you said that you put it back on the caller, but you're telling them here's where what you need to do, or can you find a safe place, or can you find an exit, that type of thing. You're kind of talking them through it as well, correct?
Correct. I mean, they're our eyes and ears. They provide the information that we have to relay to our first responders, as well as their safety. Our number one safety too is also the safety of the responders. Last thing we need one is an officer to get hurt, or a fireman, or an EMT person. So, we stay on line with them as long as we possibly can, based on the event or call type, and until we feel like it's a safe situation.
Now, what do you do if in a case like that where the phone gets disconnected prematurely? I mean, you clearly have gotten information from them. You have some inkling of what you're dealing with, but they get disconnected. Either they accidentally hang the phone up, or they have to let the call go because maybe the person who's doing this activity towards them is now in their line of sight. How do you handle that situation? Do you just simply just dispatch somebody at that point, or do you try to call them back? I mean, how do you handle that?
Well, by that point, they've already been dispatched. We're talking a high priority call. If it's somewhere where we feel like the perp or the suspect or whoever it is in the room with them, we're not going to call them back. Last thing we're hoping is maybe they're hiding somewhere. So the last thing we want to do is tip them off by having a phone ring.
Okay. All right. And that's something that you also would cover in your training too when you work with your dispatchers.
Yes, sir.
And that's also another excellent scenario of when you could potentially use text 911. If something comes up or somebody's in the room, it's a potential danger to your own safety, and you need to hang up, then that would be the best time to, if you can, make that text call where you're not alerting whoever's in that room to your whereabouts, and continuous relay of that information.
Should everyone have an in case of emergency number listed on their contacts in their phone? Do you think it's something that people should do as part of, conjunction with your work?
I think might be more a police thing. If they're on the field, if they're out with an accident with injuries where somebody might be unconscious, if they have access to a phone to find a contact to let them know, hey, we're out with so-and-so, we're taking them to whatever hospital, I think that might be more beneficial on that side of it, but not so much for us.
Okay, so that's more of a police matter or a police issue, I guess, than it would be so
Field
much.
personnel.
Yeah.
Okay, I got you. And when the system, when a call comes in, does the system know how to route the call to a specific dispatcher, or is it just simply just a matter of, hey, this person on the phone call, so is on a call already, they won't get it, it's going to go bounce to another dispatcher? How does that work?
Well, right now, currently, we have an automated call delivery set up. So when a call comes in, it'll automatically route to a call taker, and as long as they're logged into that system, it goes down the line of available call takers. Then when that operator enters the information based on the location and sends the physical call to the dispatcher, it'll route based on the location to the correct frequency or the area it's going to be dispatched out of.
So if you live in East Cobb, it's going to go to the Precinct 4 dispatcher, who's going to relay that information to the first responders who are in the Precinct 4 area.
Okay. So it's not like, Mary's the fire person and Bob's the police call guy and, and Sam is the guy who gets all the tornado calls. I mean, it doesn't work like that.
No,
Not quite that specialized.
Right.
You
As we
could go
mentioned-
from taking a call on an admin line for an alarm company who's, just got an activation from a resident's house that their alarm went off, to your next call might be giving CPR instructions. It changes second by second.
Well, that's a great point you bring about alarm systems, because obviously there are a lot of services out there that do automatic dispatch. Either the person's alarm code goes off, or they may have a real emergency. How does your department handle those type of calls, where you have somebody has a monitor in their house that's got police, fire, activation features to it? How do you interface with those systems and work with them?
It starts by setting off in their house. If it's being monitored, it goes to their monitoring company. They then call us, and we enter into our CAD system just as we would any other call. It goes to the appropriate frequency, and we dispatch. We've gotten calls sometimes from the actual homeowner saying, hey, I accidentally set my alarm off. Everything's fine here. We can't physically cancel our officers responding until we get confirmation from the alarm company that dispatched. So if you're home and you accidentally set your alarm off, you have to call your alarm company, not us.
Oh, that's a good point.
So in case somebody is in the house and they hear the alarm going off, they might try calling to cancel whoever's being dispatched if they're not supposed to be there. So we have to get confirmation from the monitoring alarm company.
Okay. And those calls come in the same way as if a call came in just from a regular person who's in a car accident? They're not coming into a different department or a different area?
They come in on our one of our administration non-emergency lines.
Okay. And do a lot of people in Cobb County, do you find, have those systems in their homes?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't know an exact number, but it seems like a lot of them have alarms registered, burglar and fire alarms.
So you've seen a big increase in the volume of those kinds of calls?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Okay. And have you found those, just on balance, have you found those kind of systems to be very helpful to people? Where you have a real emergency and those have really come in handy?
It seems like the technology's improved. Several years ago, it would seem like they would just trip based off, different types of weather. Sometimes the wind would just set it off. I think with the advancement of technology, now when you're getting them, they're a little bit more legitimate.
Okay.
Also, from a crime prevention standpoint, it is helpful if you've put out adequate public notice in your front yard that you have an alarm system that is monitored, and you keep that sign up to date and looking fresh and looking like someone actually lives there and is having their alarm monitored. It actually helps as a deterrent too.
Okay. Now, with respect to those signs, you may also brought up a good point about keeping things out there for people to be deterred from trying to break in or whatever. Besides the signs, are there particular things you recommend doing other than maybe a bumper sticker like they may give you when you get the company? Are there other signs you can buy that you can put in the yard, say this is a monitored property, or that you encourage people to do to help?
The yard signs and the window stickers that your company provides you, but just don't let them get weathered and outdated to where they look like they haven't had any care given to them. You need to refresh them frequently. External lighting, all the usual crime prevention techniques. Keep your cars in your yard, windows rolled up, locked, valuables removed.
That's a
I
good
think
point. Just remove your laptops from your front seat if you're going to park your car out in the driveway or in a parking lot. Don't advertise that you've got something of value inside your car.
I think a big one recently too is we've had a lot of packages being stolen off of front porches. If you know you're getting a package delivered and you have a tracking number, track it. Try to be there when your package gets delivered, because if the opportunity presents itself and you have somebody who might not have the best judgment, you're putting yourself at risk for an easy theft.
Is there a national standard or a county standard for how long a call takes when you first place it to approximately when the person receives assistance for that call, whether it's a crime issue or a medical emergency? Is it like a 5-minute standard, a 15-minute standard? Is there some county or national standard for those sorts of things?
So we're going to speak to the 911 industry standard for answering phones, which is very different from the response time. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, but 90% of all calls should be answered within 18 seconds. That's our goal that we strive for. There are industry standards for fire but I couldn't speak to those.
Sure.
Those are the hello to hello measures, but I couldn't speak to those.
So 18 seconds though is the standard.
That's our 911 standard, yes.
Okay. And is that standard? That's regardless of whether it's Friday night or it's Wednesday morning at 10 in the morning. That it's supposed to be stay 18 seconds all the way throughout that whole process.
Correct.
Within 18 seconds, yes. So
Okay.
that goes back to staffing and all of that. So.
Okay. All right. Well, why don't you tell each one of you tell the audience what is a takeaway that you want them to have from our panel discussion about the work you do and how they can help keep them safe in working with 911 if they have an emergency? We'll start with you, sir, and we'll kind of go across the panel.
I would say just be aware of your surroundings. A lot of people call in, they say, hey, I'm headed to Chattanooga and I broke down, I need help. And you're like, well, where are you? And they say, I'm on 75 headed eastbound, and I think I'm near exit 200. And you're like, well, none of that, it's in Cobb County, and 75 runs north-south. So just be aware of where you're at and where you're going, so when you call, you can give us a good location.
Okay. All right.
Well, not to overly plug the recruitment, but I know it's a high stress job, and it's a lot of we don't want to make it come across like it's a lot of doom and gloom, but there's a lot of perks to where we work, and it's an awesome job. There's a lot of camaraderie. It's for the amount of stress you have, it's still just it's a wonderful experience to work there.
Well, we've had prior panels where they actually said they got text messages while they were on the panel asking about interest in their department. So you never know.
I had one from a friend I went to high school with that was looking to apply today. So it's the interest is there. It's just to letting people know. It's a lot of things especially younger people. It's one of those jobs when I was 18, I never would have even thought to even begin to apply for something like this.
Right. Okay. Great. Thank you.
And Joel, I'm going to have to piggyback off of Chris. Again, the board recently made a lot of modifications to the benefits that affect public safety across the spectrum, which includes shift differential pay, educational incentive pay. So if you do have your associate's, bachelor's, or master's degree, you get an additional quarterly stipend. And the board's recently approved, as part of the Archer study, a significant raise across the board for our entry-level operators and our supervisors. So the time is now right if you're already an operator in another jurisdiction and you're interested in moving over, or if you're 18 to 25 or older and have the technical multitasking skills. It's a great entry-level job. Yes, there is stress, but there's stress with any job, and we have some perks, and we'd like for you to check out our organization.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
I'd say to the citizens of Cobb, if you see something, say something. I know it's a little cliche, but you'd be surprised how just the littlest or minor call turns into something that's pretty major, where an officer might make an arrest or start an investigation that leads to bigger and better things. With that being said, like we keep touching on the recruitment part, we're recruiting hard. Please take a look at us. We provide the training as we talked about in the last hour and a half or so. It takes a lot to do what we do, and that's why it takes so long to do what we do, because we are professionals here. Citizens in Cobb County are in good hands at the end of the day. We will get you help. Be patient with us, like Chris mentioned earlier. There's a reason why we ask you the questions. It's not delaying your service at all.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I have to piggyback off of Andrew. I'm being on the floor, answering the calls, dispatching the calls, location, 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 in every aspect of it. Know where you are, know your surroundings, be observant. If you're witnessing something in progress, remember that shirt color, remember, what color hair they had. Little details like that are very important when it comes to public safety.
Okay, wonderful.
And I'd have to say the face of 911 has changed a lot in terms of the technology that the operators interface with, but that the job itself hasn't changed. If you like helping people, 911 is a job for you. If you like technology, 911 is a job for you, because you got both there. It is different being a call taker from being the person on the other end of the line. And even today, 30 years into this, I'd rather be on the 911 side than be on the telephone side, trying to remember that shirt color that I just saw, or be the mother of the patient who's passed out in the bathroom or the laundry room or whatever. It's the technology advancements are such that what used to take us beyond 18 seconds or 30 seconds to write down can be done in split seconds with the technology that's there. But it is highly technical, and you do end up spending 6 to 12 months in training, but it's all worth it. The satisfaction of going home knowing I helped save a baby's life. I provided CPR instructions over the phone. There's also the stressful ones where an officer's been hurt, or public refuses to provide CPR. You have those moments. But if you enjoy helping people and you like technology, this is a job for you. I didn't intend on this being a career. This was going to be my 10-year outlet, because I was a college student who needed a good paying job. Back then it didn't pay what it's paying now. But if you like helping people and you like technology, this is a job for you. And there's plenty of opportunities within the 911 center that you can be more than just a 911 operator, as this panel here attests to that.
Okay. Well, you make a very compelling message for this career. I hope you guys experience a huge surge in applications after tonight's panel discussion. That's great, and we thank you for all the work that you do each and every day. We appreciate that, and I think our members of the audience, both live as well as on TV 23 and online, should be very fortunate. We have such dedicated public servants working on our behalf here in Cobb County. So I want to thank you for taking time out. You could be here with your families tonight, but you've chosen to help educate the community and the public and tell them about some great things you're doing, and also how to handle themselves in emergency. So thank you again for your service every day, and as well tonight. So. And I also, of course, want to thank our folks at TV 23 helping make this broadcast possible, but and thank our members of the audience who've been very interested and engaged. And I think they've received some wonderful information tonight, and I definitely look forward to future panel discussions more about the work that you guys are doing. So thank you so very much. And with further ado, I will turn it over to Trish.
Thank you. Thank you for attending and watching on Cobb TV this evening. We especially want to thank Joel, our moderator, and our dynamic 911 panel members. We are honored to have each of you as our panel members this evening. Our community is very fortunate to have each of you dedicating your lives to being the calm, reassuring voice in an emergency situation. Having excellent communication skills, phenomenal multitasking skills, and the ability to work and remain calm in a very stressful conditions. You are the first point of contact for individuals in need of emergency services, and you make a difference in individuals' lives that live, and they really leave a lasting impression, and you change many, many lives every day. You are appreciated greatly by the community. Thank you so much for your dedication. We truly appreciate your daily dedication, and you are all very special and dynamic individuals. A special thank you, David, for broadcasting tonight's discussion. Thank you for joining us this evening. We invite you to watch all of our 2013 through 2017 panel discussions on Cobb TV or link from Neighborhood Safety Commission website. Please join us Wednesday, April the 19th for our April panel discussion. We will have Chairman Boyce, Commissioner Ott, DOT Director Jim Wiglis, and Major Adcock discussing SunTrust Park. Thank you and good night.